I'm Paul Sullivan, your host of the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, sublime, strange, and silly aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men often feel they have to hide, or at least not talk about their parenting role. I know this from firsthand experience as a lead dad to my 3 girls, 3 dogs, 3 cats, and somewhat remarkably, 3 fish. I did this all while managing my career and striving to be an above average husband. One thing I know for sure about being a lead dad is it's not a normal role. You're not doing what dads have traditionally done, going to work and leaving the parenting to mom or someone else. Nor are you always welcome into the world where moms are the primary caregivers. But here at the Company of Dads, our goal is to shake all that off and focus on what really matters: family, friendship, finance, and fun. Today, my guest is Rob Kenney, creator of Dad, How Do I? He created this during the onset of the pandemic to provide what he calls Dadvice to kids who didn't have a dad. He knew the role personally growing up without a father. Married with 2 grown children, he said that he wanted to help other kids without fathers. We got a lot to talk about today. I'm really excited. Rob, thanks for joining me on the Company of Dads podcast.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
My focus is dads. We're here talking about fatherhood. How are you shaped, good or bad, by having the family situation you did early on? I'll let you tell the story about your father and your mother, but how did that shape you, good or bad, as the man and the father you would become?
Well, I think because of my dad leaving when I was 14, there was actually, I don't know how much backstory you want, but I'm one of 8 kids. I'm number 7, and we, the older siblings were born in Kansas. We moved to New Orleans. My mom thought that she was going to grow up around all her siblings. She was one of 12. Wow. And so my dad uprooted us and took us to New Orleans because his Boeing job dried up in Wichita. And so he took us to New Orleans for the space program. And that's where I was born. And then a couple of years later, we moved up to Seattle. And so all that moving took a toll on my mom. And so she, it wasn't the life she had envisioned for herself and for her kids. And so it took a toll on their marriage. So it started to fall apart. And there was a time where my mom turned to alcohol. Unfortunately, my heart goes out to her now as an adult, looking back and, from
understanding it.
Yeah. Trying to understand it better. But anyway, so the marriage fell apart. My mom wasn't able to take care of us. So my dad got custody of us, but he didn't really want us. He was kind of done parenting, but hadn't actually voiced that yet. So there was a time when I was 12, 13, where he got custody of us. And some of the older siblings were already out of the home by then, but us younger siblings were still kind of fending for ourselves. My dad would load us up with groceries and then be gone for a week because he had met another woman. And so, I even got good at signing my dad's signature in case I was really actually sick, because he wasn't around to, sign the note. So, and then when I was 14, he officially came home and said, I'm done raising kids, was his words. Not really a choice that you can just say, well, I'm just done,
Yeah.
So he's told.
What was that like, that moment? Because you're the 7th of 8. So how many are in that room for when he has that conversation, and how does he even start that conversation?
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy for me, and I've tried to piece it together, but there's a lot of trauma with some of the other siblings that don't necessarily want to even uncover it. I want to uncover it so we can kill it. Let's get it out in the light so that we can expose it for what it was. And it wasn't our fault that it happened. I think a lot of times kids will carry that around like maybe I did something wrong, when really it wasn't my fault. And my dad just kind of lost it a little bit for a time, and so there. So I feel like I remember it, but I also wonder if I, by hearing the story so many times, I don't know that I was actually there. But I think I was. I think it was me and a couple of the younger siblings, and I think my brother, who I ended up living with, Rick, I think he was there. I think it was actually at a birthday party for somebody, one of us, and my dad had come home for that. Yeah, so pretty cold-hearted. His heart had grown pretty hard towards us, which is, now when I think back on it, it's pretty hard to believe, as a dad, that your heart would grow that cold towards your kids. But somehow something happened where he had Yeah. So anyway, yeah, because of that. So then I went to live with my brother,
And
Rick.
how much older was your brother, and where was he in the birth order?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's number three. And he was 23 at the time. You know, it
Okay.
seemed old. I joke about that. It seemed old at the time because I was only 14,
14.
23, like, you know, an adult, where it is. But I also understand my son he'll be 27 next month. And I can't imagine him taking on a 14-year-old, much less a 23-year-old,
Right.
you know.
So if Rick was number three, did siblings, 4, 5, 6, you're 7 and 8, all move in with him, or what happened to those your other siblings who were younger?
Yeah. So my younger sister went to live with my oldest sister.
Okay.
And then the second oldest was my brother, and he was kind of a little bit of a black sheep. So he wasn't in a place where he could have taken anybody in.
Yeah.
And then my sister Lori, I can't remember where she was at that time, but she wasn't really in a place to do that. And then the brothers that are just two above me, Joe and Don, they were 16 and 17, and they ended up getting an apartment. So they got their own story. They got an apartment that my dad partially funded for them to live in an apartment while they were still in high school.
Yep. Yep. So is it fair to say, like, I mean, I can't even imagine this happening, but did Rick become like a de facto dad at that point, or did all
Yeah.
this kind of come to? Yeah.
Yeah. Rick was always more, he was older than his years. Rick has always kind of been that way, where he kind of has taken on where he always kind of looked out for us younger siblings too, anyway, before
Yeah.
all this. So my parents did start out well, really instilled some good qualities in the older siblings, but yeah, unfortunately when it fell apart, I guess I should say fortunately, when it fell apart, they were kind of equipped to take on that role, where my sister Mary did that for my youngest sister Angie. And yeah, so they kind of filled those roles. And even to this day, I think we all kind of look up to them as the matriarch and patriarch of the family,
Sure.
even though they're siblings.
Yeah. And really, as you get older, they're not that much older than you. When you're a young kid, 7 years seems like a lot, but as you become an adult, you have plenty of friends who are 10 years older than you, 15 years older. Yeah.
Right. And Rick, like a parent, as you'll see when you with your own kids, you have to, as they get older and older, your relationship changes. You can't treat them like they were 5 when they're 10, or you can't treat them, like so you have to kind of adjust. And Rick and I are best friends now. He doesn't, he slowly let that chain out to where then we could have a normal relationship where we're best friends. And it's kind of the same way with my own kids. I've had to, as they got older and older, I had to just kind of, okay, now we're just peers. You still respect me as your dad, but I'm taking advice from them and they're taking advice from me, and we kind of are trying to do life together.
I read somewhere though that you reconciled, or you forgave your father. Is that true?
I did. It wasn't easy.
Sure. Yeah.
And yeah, I do talk about forgiveness a lot. I think that's a big, if you can come away from anything that I ever say, forgiveness being a huge thing in anybody's life, because, then there's people with victim cards. I had a victim card. Some people have bigger victim cards than me, of course. And some people don't have victim cards at all, but they still play them, and they kind of live their whole lives with excuses of why, oh, it's because of that. That's why. And I think a big thing for me, I had to forgive my dad. It took me a long time to do it, but when I finally did, because I kept waiting for him to ask for forgiveness. And, if you wait for the other person to ask for forgiveness, that may never happen. And meanwhile, my life is passing by,
Right. Your life is sort of paused, and instead you're taking control of the narrative by going to him and saying, look, and it's you're controlling the conversation, as opposed to what happened when you were 14 and he controlled the conversation.
Right. It would have been helpful to actually have him acknowledge what he did, and so in my book, I share that I forgave him, and then he ended up asking for forgiveness later on, much later. And by that time he was kind of he was in his late 80s, and he died a couple of years later. But he actually asked me for forgiveness, and it was interesting just to kind of see how he, in his own mind, blocked out the guilt, maybe, where I didn't feel like he felt the weight. I said, but Dad, I was 14, and I said, I forgive you because I've been forgiven myself and I've already forgiven you. But it would be nice if you could feel the weight, of what you did. So
the pivot to your own children, when you get married and you had children and you have a son and a daughter, what were you thinking? Like, okay, I'm about to become a dad. Here's what I want to make sure I do, and here's what I want to make sure I avoid.
Yeah, my even back from my 14-year-old mind, because of what my dad did, I vowed to never do that, to the best of my ability as a 14-year-old, in my 14-year-old mind. And I always that was a goal of mine, was to raise good adults. I always talk about that. You don't want to raise good children. I don't want them living in my basement. As much as I love them, I think it's good for them to live their own lives.
Playing Legos at 27 years old. You're like, what are you doing? Like, I'm really good at Legos, Dad. You're 27 years old.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's hard, kind of getting off on a tangent, but it is hard to let your kids go. But it's what, my daughter moved to Tennessee a few years ago. She's back now, but at the time it was like, go, you guys need to, you need to go, because it was all part of the plan of, raising good adults. I wanted to make, and so I married well. My wife and I have been on the same page with that, and marriage is tough too. You got to work at that to make sure that things kind of stay intact. And, but the overall goal was to raise good adults. And so when our kids left, everybody goes through a midlife crisis of some sort. But for me, you were talking about career and that sort of thing. Career wasn't really as much as, it wasn't so important to me as raising good adults. That was kind of that was the goal that I had in mind. And so when the kids left, I was a little bit lost. So
what do you do for a living?
I'm in sales.
Yep. So was it the type of job that sort of afforded you, time to be with your kids, little league, ballet, or whatever they happen to enjoy doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I had, and that worked out kind of, it wasn't planned that way, but it just kind of worked out that way through a series of events. I got into sales, and I'm an introvert. I've shared that before. So it's ironic that I have almost 4 million subscribers on YouTube, because, I'm kind of out there. And so when my channel went viral, it was terrifying for me, because I never imagined it being that. And so as sales, as an introvert, is a little bit interesting, but it's worked out well for me.
Yep. And what about your wife? What did she do?
Yeah, so she was a stay-at-home mom for 13 years, and then she actually works at the airport now, and that was cool. A godsend, because we insurance is tough, and trying to pay for insurance and trying to pay for everything and stuff on one salary was difficult. And she got a part-time job with full-time benefits there, so that was helped out a lot.
When your kids were young, what were the things that you enjoyed the most doing with them? What were the things that you really look forward to?
I tried to make it, the simple pleasures. I tried to enjoy whatever kind of time that when we did anything. I tried to make it fun, even coming home from work. I know Monday Night Football, I'd come home and then we'd dance around to the Monday Night Football theme song, kind of making.
You were lucky though, like being on the West Coast, Monday Night Football was earlier for you, unless you had a West Coast game. So you didn't have to keep the kids up late.
Right. That's fair. That's something I didn't have to experience, but so come home and little things like that. We always tried to make, and my brother Rick kind of helped me with that. When I lived with him, he was always good at making simple pleasures out of, not spending a whole lot of money necessarily, but, kind of just enjoying each other's time and, spending quantity time together. I think, you hear about the quality time, I want to make sure to spend quality time, but a lot of quality time happens because of quantity time.
Sure. I always say that, I love driving my kids anywhere with their friends, and I don't really care. I turn the radio down. And that's when you really hear them talking. And that's when you really hear them, sharing things. You really get a sense of what goes on at school. Because as I said, my kids are young. So otherwise, you're like, how was school today? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing. How's so-and-so? Good. But when you're but that's just, it's not something that's planned. It's not like, okay, we're going to go ice skating today. It's like, okay, I'll drive you around. Or, oh yeah, you want to go do this? I'll drive you there. Yeah. One thing that's always fascinated me, just sort of, I'm a student of human nature, is that we often sort of define ourselves in opposition to something or someone we don't like, or the flip side, we model ourselves after something or someone that we really liked. Now, in your case, obviously, be expected, understandable to model yourself in opposition to your father and what he did. But life, it becomes more nuanced than that. So as you saw your kids get older, as your kids got past sort of age 14 when your dad left you, how did your sort of thinking and feeling and actions around being a dad evolve?
Yeah, I actually write about this in my book about taking kind of the what you're talking about taking good qualities kind of thing, or taking bad qualities. That's not something I want to do. And that's actually the first part of my book is all about that, about my siblings and how I learned different character traits from them that I think are valuable to pass on to other people. Because you can, you meet people and go, oh, I really like that about that person. Or you meet somebody, boy, I don't ever want to do that, And I remember the quote, no man's life is a complete waste. He can always be used as a bad example, which is a pretty sad thing. But you think of a lot of that wisdom as you go along, and it's like, okay, what kind of legacy am I leaving? What is, what do I want to pass along to them as really core values that I think are powerful? And I try to always incorporate those in my own life. It isn't always easy. I'm not trying to act like I have it all together at all times. I'm constantly learning myself.
What were some of those core values?
Yeah. So actually, when I'll be 58 next month. When I turned 50, I went around to each of my siblings and thanked them for a quality character trait. And my sister Mary was about the importance of family. Because when our family fell apart, I was just trying to survive. I didn't see the importance of staying connected to all these people that cared about me. And so family. And then my brother Tim was having a backbone. It's important to have a backbone. You got to stick up for yourself and question authority, even though in our day and age that can be a little bit scary to say, go ahead and question authority. Well, I don't mean to be a rebel just to be a rebel. Yeah. I mean, if this isn't what you think should be happening, then you need to stand up and say something. And then my brother Rick, who I lived with, was work ethic. I think having a good work ethic is really important. And then my sister Lori was about encouraging. It's good to be an encourager. You don't want to be the person that squashed somebody's dreams because they made you uncomfortable, maybe. Yeah. And then my brother Joe, I talk about don't hesitate if you've thought it through. You can sit there and just analysis paralysis. Pretty soon you got to make a decision. Otherwise your life is going by. And then my brother Don, I talk about being generosity, because he's always been very generous. And then my youngest sister, unfortunately, she wanted to be left out of the book because a lot of the trauma that we dealt with, she's unfortunately still dealing with to this day.
Sure. Did you have a trait yourself? Was there a character trait that you feel that you most embrace or embody?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily put anything there. I did share a lot of my story and just kind of how it made me the person that
I wonder if it was like perseverance or optimism.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's actually what I had planned for and that's what I told my youngest sister at my 50th. I said, perseverance is what I look at from you. I feel like you've had to persevere through all this. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to say that. So I guess you kind of get it from the overall theme of the book. You would get kind of what has made me, but I don't think there was any necessarily one thing that I picked out.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to me about the idea for Dad. How do I and this YouTube channel? How does it come to you? I know it came to you before the pandemic, but it was really during the pandemic that it launched. But how do you get the idea?
Yeah, it kind of forced my hand. So I talk to my kids all the time about adulting still, even to this day. And, as you're learning things, and if you never had somebody show you, you just kind of, I got to fix that, or I got to figure out how to do that. And so I thought, I wanted to make a channel just to download some nuggets, because I think a lot of times on YouTube, there's, and I'll go to YouTube to watch stuff, and it's like 20-minute video to get that that 30-second nugget I needed like at, the minute 15. So I was trying to make my videos short and concise and right to the point, and here you go. It's evolved a little bit now, so I include a dad joke compared to
we'll get to those later. I want to get to those later.
I try to make them good quality dad jokes, and so that I filter through them. Some of them go, that'll never make my channel, but some anyway. So so it's really evolved into this crazy thing that I thought I was going to help 30 or 40 people. I've said that on many interviews. It is true. I had no idea it was going to be what it is today.
Before the pandemic, are you saying to your wife, your son, you're saying, hey, anyone want to watch me change a tire? Or are they rolling their eyes? Or was there a moment like that?
There was rolling of eyes.
A lot of rolling of eyes, yeah.
Definitely. Even when I did my how to tie a tie one, because that was the first one, how to tie a tie, because it was not much of a commitment, pretty easy. I shot it on my phone. And I really ran out of excuses because of the pandemic. I was at home like everybody else, and I'm like, I can do this. It's not going to hurt anything, and only 30 or 40 people are going to see it or whatever. I didn't see it being what it is today.
What was the date? I could look up. What was the date of that first one? The how to tie a tie.
Yeah, so I started my channel April 1st, April Fool's Day of 2020. And then the tie video was April 2nd. So I uploaded the next day. All
right, Rob, I'm a pretty positive guy, so I don't want to point out, but your first video was how to tie a tie during a pandemic where everybody is stuck at home. What were you thinking? Like, just to make people like one day you'll go outside again? Or what was the thinking behind that being the first one?
Well, I think part of that had to be with it, its simplicity. And it is something that everybody kind of needs to know how to do. And I also know I've heard from people saying, it's a bit traumatic too, for people that maybe their dad did leave and they don't know how to tie a tie. So when you go to tie a tie, the frustration of the fact that your dad's not there, traditionally a dad role, I'm not trying to act like it's only a dad thing, but it's a reminder. And I've heard sad stories from people saying that, that was a painful experience, not knowing how to do that for a young man that didn't know his dad, because it reminded him that his dad wasn't there.
On a lighter side, I learned to tie a tie, early on, but when I got to college, my roommate, this is in early 1990s, he wore bow ties because his father, who is an OBGYN in Sanford, Connecticut, has always wears bow ties. So there was a whole bow tie wearing family. And I said, boy, this is great, because I was kind of a sloppy guy and I would spill on my tie. And so like, if you're wearing a bow tie, you only spill on your shirts, you save on the dry cleaning bill. And so him teaching me to tie a bow tie was, at first, this is fun. I'll buy some bow ties, I'll wear them. And it has served me so well in life, because every wedding I go to, if it's black tie or there's, the groomsmen, I'm tying bow ties. But, as a journalist, I'd meet occasionally I would meet a world leader or something like that. And they would comment on my bow tie. And the best moment ever was, whatever your politics are, I was at a dinner, it was after his presidency, and Bill Clinton was there. And Bill Clinton has this amazing way, I'd never met him before, of speaking just loud enough so everybody at the table leans in, but not so loudly that people at the other table can hear him. So everybody is, and he picks a person at the table, and he picked me, and he says, and I won't do his impersonation, but he says, that young man over there, pause, he knows how to do something that I've never learned in all my years, not even as president. Pause, tie a bow tie. And so I jumped over and I said, Mr. President, let me help you. And I tied the bow tie and I showed him how to tie it. So, tying a tie comes in handy.
That's pretty.
It was fun. So the tie was the first one. Then you do a second one, a third one, a fourth one. What was the first one that really took off? When did you start seeing that YouTube count really start to tick up quickly?
Yeah, so it was right around May 20th. Reddit got a hold of it, and at that time I probably had 7 videos, maybe, not that many. And I had said that, my plan was to do a Tool Tuesday and do a video every Thursday. And that was kind of the plan, because I was in the pandemic, I had time. And so that was kind of the plan. But then when my channel went viral, right around that time, May 20th, I didn't have a whole lot of time because I was being requested, interviews and all kinds of sponsorships, all kinds of craziness that I had no idea. My email was full of all these requests and all this stuff, and I was overwhelmed, not knowing what to do. And so I actually did a video called Thank You, and then also I'm Proud of You, and those were just kind of from my heart. And if you watch them now, you can tell I was emotional. I was a little bit of an emotional wreck because I was like, what just happened to my life? My face is everywhere, all over the internet, and I hadn't planned on this. And so, so those resonated really well. The tying a tie and the shaving videos resonate with people because, again, for all different reasons. Maybe the dad's not there, never had a dad, miss your dad. So I've had people tell me they're bawling watching me tie a tie. And I thought here I was just showing them how to tie a tie. I didn't know I was going to get into this emotional part of being a dad. But yeah, so I think that's the thing that really has surprised me about the channel is I was just trying to be myself and show people how to do some things.
Yeah. At a certain point, did your employer call you up and say, "Hey, Rob, remember all those meetings you missed and you said you were busy? We just saw you on whatever."
I had to tell them because I was going to be on that local TV station. I said, guys, I'm just letting you know, I kind of did this and here's where it's at now. Because by that time I had like 10,000 subscribers, which was surprising to me. I was like, man, I can't. When I had 300 subscribers, I'm like, I can't believe there's this many, So I'd be out on a walk. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just got 2 more subscribers. And now, it's obviously way beyond that. So yeah, so it was interesting because I had to kind of let them know. And another thing too is some other people that I work with had used YouTube to help promote our business, and then here I had used YouTube for something completely different. So it was interesting.
Did they understand? Were they okay with it, or did they?
Oh, they've been great. They've been absolutely great. And and I'm still working, still trying to figure out everything, but now it's getting harder because I just went to a lunch yesterday, a business lunch that I had to attend. But I'm doing so many other things right now too. It's getting to a tipping point now where I'm going to have to make a decision. So
obviously my vote is for the dad side, but it's a big decision. What are your most popular videos? If you had like a category of videos, what are the ones that are the most popular?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, the thank you and I'm proud of you video where I kind of have shared from my heart. And some of the more simple ones like the tying a tie, those are all up near the top. And I'm still producing content. I did a series on football, explaining football to people that don't understand football, because I thought that was a valuable thing to pass along. If you don't know how to play football, here's the basics, and kind of walk you through that, because there's a little bit involved. One thing that's a little tricky, I find, is our TikTok world, so to speak, where people want the information and they want it as quickly as possible, and they won't hang with you so it's a little bit interesting because people, I feel like they want this, but their attention span has almost been trained to, if I don't get it in a certain amount of time, I'm moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, I love this though, because it's like all those Mondays of dancing around your house with your kids to the Monday Night Football theme song came in handy.
Yeah,
you could do that.
Yeah, see, that's what. And I do kind of, in my own way, do my Monday night theme song. I don't know if you've watched my videos, but I lead in with my version of it. So.
Yeah. What are ones that you thought, this could be really helpful, this be interesting, and people haven't responded? Are there certain things that you found out that people don't want to learn from your videos?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I don't know. I've kind of tried it all. So
yeah,
and then
he's testing it out.
It's interesting because I've read children's books. I've done cooking videos. I've done, lawn care. I've done kind of all of the above, and obviously it's going to resonate. Certain are going to resonate with certain people, and other things. So I've had people say, "Hey, explain baseball to me now." Okay, well, the football series didn't really reach as many people as I thought it might. And so I was like, okay, well, now do I do baseball then is that only going to be for a handful of people? But maybe so, as I'm constantly creating different content. I haven't actually posted anything in few weeks because I was on vacation and then I was sick, but
Okay.
I'll be, yeah,
You'll be back.
I'll ramp it back up here shortly.
Yeah. What do your kids think about this? You know, it's been 2 years. It's been pretty meteoric. What are your kids like? Dad, what's going on here? What's their response?
Yeah, my daughter's been there the whole time, so and she still helps me with social media. She wants to pull herself out, and so we're working with a new social media team to help me because she didn't want to leave me. Thankfully she's like, she knew that I didn't have the capabilities to handle my Instagram and Facebook, so she's been handling those for me.
Yep.
I still handle YouTube, but so yeah, she's been super supportive, but it does put a little bit of a different spin on our relationship. And so and she's even expressed that. She said, I kind of want to have a normal relationship with you again. And I was like, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we still have a pretty normal relationship to the best of our ability, but it definitely, puts a different spin on things. And then my son, when it first went viral, I asked him, because I said, Kyle, what do you think about what has happened here? And I said, if it's not something you want me to do, I said, I'll shut it down. My family's more important to me than this. I'd be I'm happy that I'm able to help people. And he said, Dad, if I was 9 years old and you were chasing this thing and not spending time with me, he said, I'd have a problem. But he said, if it's something you enjoyed, go for it. So
that's wonderful. That's a good, I mean, that's a good endorsement of your parenting. Like that they both, you were supportive of them when they were growing up, and now they're supportive of you in this thing that's just kind of taken off.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, I'm so grateful that I went viral for something. I joke about that. I'm so grateful I went viral for something wholesome, and helpful. Instead, in this day and age, everybody's got a phone, and you might have a bad moment, somewhere, and somebody records it, and suddenly you're labeled as that guy,
Right.
So yeah, I'm grateful for the platform that I've been given.
All right. I said this earlier on that we're going to come back to the jokes. You're known for your dad jokes, and they're really perfect dad jokes. And I mean that honestly, where they're bad because they're dad jokes, but they're sort of, they're bad in the way you're like, oh my God, I'm laughing at that. It's funny. And you kind of, it's like one beat, two beat, boom. Where do you come up with them? Do you have a dad joke writer? Do you have like a writer's room, coming up? How do they come to you?
A lot of dad jokes are fairly obvious. They're kind of standing right in front of you, but I search for some too, especially if I'm doing a video about something. I try to make the joke, fit with the video that I'm doing. I try to. Not all of them work that way because I'm like, I just can't find a good joke to fit with what I'm doing today. So I'm just going to throw out something else. But yeah, so all of the above. And I've the one of my favorites came from my brother.
What is it? Tell me. Tell us.
So my son said he didn't understand cloning. I told him that makes two of us.
See? One beat, laugh. One beat, boom. Laugh. What is your favorite? What is your favorite? What's the one that still makes you laugh?
Well, I got a couple, but the one that I kind of always go to is an antenna and a satellite got married. The wedding wasn't much, but the reception was incredible.
Oh my God. Dad jokes making other dads laugh. I like that.
Here's another one. Okay. So my sister, I told my sister she drew her eyebrows too high. She seemed surprised.
It's I love it. Oh, Rob Kenney, thank you so much. I always like to give my guest the last word, more or less. So what's the last word? You built up this dad advice empire. I mean, it's amazing. It's fun. It's needed. It's interesting. Where do you go from here?
I just want to continue to encourage and walk alongside people and encourage people to forgive. Like I said, I think that's such a big part of my message to people because you can't do anything about the past. It's not beneficial to keep dragging the past into the future. So, to the best of your ability, and I get it. I understand that it isn't always easy to forgive. I get it. But coming from my perspective, being on the other side of forgiving my dad and understanding the freedom that it gave me, because that whole saying of, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping it somehow hurts the other person. That was true in my life. If you're constantly chewing on that and chewing on it and chewing on it, it's not beneficial. If you can let go of that and live your best life, because it is your life and you only have one. Why spend it living in the past?
Great. Rob Kenney, thank you again for joining me on the Company of Dads podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed our time today.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me on, Paul.